Hello, today I will show you the transformation of my front garden. This is what my yard looked like before I started any work. I had some flower beds with just plain soil and lots of weeds. After pulling out the weeds, I planted some primrose for quick spring color. And the fall prior, I planted daffodils and tulips. I also added little mounds of rock cress. By the gate, I also transplanted some violets, which I actually found growing in the shade of these big yew trees. Here you can see ice plant, which I planted in spring, and by summer they started blooming profusely. For summer, I grew zinnias and marigolds from seeds. And I also purchased some daylilies and marguerite daisies to brighten up the space. So later in the season, you can see zinnias in their full glory. In the fall, the flower beds were colorful. I had some marigolds. I purchased pansies and garden mums. The color lasted roughly until the beginning of December, and that is when most of the plants stopped producing. I also planted a raspberry. This was late winter, early beginning of spring. And my pansies did a wonderful job this spring. They bloomed very profusely. I love the combination of all of these colorful pansies, marguerite daisies, alliums, and my salt cedar tree in bloom. Now, the fall prior, we had these yew trees and a juniper trimmed, and some of them got pruned quite severely, so they looked quite wretched here with lots and lots of gaps. And I added another raspberry plant to my collection. Here I decided to beautify this space around the pole by adding 3 clematis plants, and later on in the year I added moss rose. In summer, these flower beds were dominated by zinnias. They were so gorgeous with many different colors. Here you can see the progression. Some of these zinnias were about 6 feet tall. And in this area, I also had lots and lots of petunias. And then just look at this flower bed covered in bright pink ice plant blooms. I absolutely loved the look of my flower beds here. Very fall, and I fully intended to repeat this look the next year. Minus the zinnias right here because I couldn't quite see the gate. And this is my round flower bed. One of my clematis died early on in the season. For the fall, I planted some pansies here, and they looked just stunning at the beginning of the season. I also decided to plant some snakehead bulbs for next spring. Both of my raspberry bushes gave me fruit this year. In the fall, you can see Marguerite daisies were still blooming, but the ice plant wasn't as prolific. I decided to refresh the beds by adding some new pansies, and I mulched the area as well. The background, you can see the mums that I had planted the year prior, and they're just waiting to form the buds and bloom. Some of the plants do have flowers, whereas the tree turned brown. This year the mums were definitely more plentiful. Approaching winter, all the flowers are beginning to fade. Everything looks a little less colorful, a little less interesting, and the plants are looking tired. But towards the end of the season, some of my daffodils are beginning to pop up. And then have a look at this. Gorgeous, gorgeous display with clematis. This was fantastic to see. And then my snakehead fritillaria also showed up. There is a beautiful view with my salt cedar on the left and the neighbor's cherry tree on the right. Daffodils tend to naturalize pretty easily, so it was fun seeing them back again. The tulips didn't come back as reliably, but I did add some new ones to the mix. And here is the ice plant again. Just stunning. For the summer, I decided to try and repeat what I had last year. So I planted lots of petunias. And instead of having zinnias, I decided to try cosmos plants instead. Unfortunately, neither one performed well for me during the summer. However, my raspberry bushes were very bountiful. And here's my round flower bed. I decided to try planting sweet peas, and I loved how colorful they were. Finally, towards the beginning of the fall, the flower beds have taken off. Here I had underplanted lobelia and sweet alyssum. They definitely brought a lot of color. And at the gate, I did plant zinnias again. They performed beautifully. However, towards the end of summer, they did start getting powdery mildew, so I had to pull them out. At the beginning of the fall, not a lot of color here. I planted a few violas, but then the mums did come into their own with their fantastic blooms. And the cosmos finally came through as well, and they looked magical. Definitely want to have them in my flower beds again next year. I'm just not sure that this is the right spot for them, as they got very, very tall. So much so that they were blocking the entrance. Again, with less light and less warmth, there are less blooms with the ice plant, but we had a very mild fall and lots of raspberries. In my round bed, I planted the black-eyed Susan vine, or Thunbergia, and I thought it looked quite pretty. By winter time, everything got tired. Here you can see that the cosmos did not like the hard freeze, and they looked absolutely horrifying. So I quickly pulled them out. And then the flower beds just were looking tired, with the exception of the mums that just kept blooming. Even though the leaves looked tired, they tried really hard. Even in the frost, they looked gorgeous. And here we are at the end of the 3-year progression. I hope you enjoyed this little review with me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.